Awesome. Awesome. So, welcome to umi-connections strategy chat. It's a podcast where we help people connect the dots and help bring ideas to reality. And I am sharing with you friends of mine who've helped me to do the same thing. And today I wanted to welcome Mr. Edward L. Fairley, who is a relationship expert, a entrepreneur, a great and amazing brother. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you about resetting relationships as we move into 2019. And we're just going through that process of taking inventory of our lives and kind of doing vision boards and setting, objectives for the next year. And maybe like feel like me, it's 5-year chunks. But anyway, as we go into that season, I just wanted to touch base with you because one of the areas that we typically tend to review and evaluate is relationships. So thank you so much, Edward, for joining me today. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Awesome. We've been friends a long time, but the way that we met was when I walked through Waterside in Norfolk and saw the book. And I was in a relationship issue. I don't know, maybe not, but something about your book jumped out at me. I believe I read it that night, literally cover to cover, and then I emailed you. I was like, "This is really cool." So I encourage other people to do it. But what was the name of the book again?
The Handbook for Increasing Your Relationship IQ. It was just a handbook that I wrote because I know not everybody's a big reader, but I did feel that it was information that it was needed as foundational information to assist people with going through their dating challenges, relationship challenges, all the way to and through their marital challenges, just foundational stuff that they could build upon to address deep-rooted issues that are often missed during those processes that causes issues that people don't even realize they cause in their relationship journey. So that's it.
I think that's what jumped out at me at the time was the root of it. Mm-hmm. I was probably having some relationship issues because I'm a woman. But I remember going back and thinking, oh man, if I could just get the root right, all this other stuff's gonna fall into place. And oh my goodness, thanks for the paradigm shift. And so again, that to me is what I really want to hopefully kind of walk through and help the Umi family kind of see is that if you can get the root right, the rest of the stuff kind of falls into place. And as you're looking back on relationships in the reflective process and preparing for the new year, if you can get the root right, or you can just double check and make sure it's growing healthy, then, the new year can be as prosperous as, a beautiful flowering garden as relationships are. So I have a couple of ideas, but I did want you to talk a little bit about what I know for sure is that love is the basis of all that you do. Like your whole core is motivated by love. And that there's a whole platform. The book came out of love. The next chapter for you, which is another entrepreneurial pursuit, came out of love. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Most certainly. Actually, it's all stemmed from the fight from love, for love. So the book was birthed out of a struggling marriage. The first 3 years of my marriage. Well, the first year was great. Then it seemed like soon as we hit our year anniversary, from year 2 to year 4 was hell, literally hell. And we were ready to call it quits. We didn't say it, but it was apparent that that's where we were. And interestingly enough, at the time I was a telecommunications mechanic or technician. And what they taught us as technicians is whether we're fixing data, whether we're fixing the television or telephone, you start where the problem is, which is what the customer called for. Hey, my phone's not working, it's doing this. You start at that phone, or you start at that television, or you start at that computer, and you work your way back to where the signal is good, which fixes everything. Ironically, we just talked about the root of everything. So I decided that if this was working and I was successful in my career as a technician, why not do the same thing or take that same approach with my marriage? So I began to troubleshoot my marriage. Of course, the problem was at the marriage. So I started there. And from there, I started troubleshooting my marriage. I found some aha moments, things that I was like, how in the world did we miss this as a contributor to the issues that we're having? And from that, we fixed it. But as I stated, you have to go to where it's good. And it wasn't necessarily good at the marriage once I really got into digging in and troubleshooting. So I had to go back to when we were in a relationship, and I began to troubleshoot that journey and came up with some aha moments like, wow, how in the world did we miss this? This was contributing to the issues that we were having in our marriage. And then again, the relationship or the beginning of a relationship, but that wasn't necessarily the good point. Once I really dove into it, and I had to go further, so I started going back to when we were dating, found like, wow, that was a big, big miss. How in the world? Yeah, how do we miss that? And then from there, it wasn't necessarily good, so I had to go back to when I was dating other females, and only to find that the same exact realization that I had when we were dating was the same exact realization that I had with the other females that I had dated as contributors to those issues or relationships. But again, I still was not at a good place. So I ended up having or getting to myself and realizing the insecurities and the self-esteem issues and all of the things that contributed to that. And once I got to the root of what caused those and the realization as to how ridiculous those thought processes were about myself, I was able to get to a good place within myself. And from there, bring it all the way back to my marriage, where we are now happily married for 14 years.
Thriving marriage, role model for me, the single woman. Again, I intentionally try to surround myself with people who are living in a space that I want to live in, so that I can kind of, be reinforced that this is possible. Like a healthy, loving relationship, raising self-aware children based on the information that you kind of learn, and being able to. One of the things I've gotten most out of our relationship was the ability to have transparent, engaging, healthy feedback that isn't always just about agreeing, but working through different perspectives, which has helped us to have, I think, like I said, having you in my life has helped me to accept conflict as not having to alienate the relationship or even have tension in the relationship when we disagree, because it's coming from a loving place. It's completely reasonable to have two perspectives and not lose the relationship. And that helped me to really be more mindful of people's perspectives and respectful of them, and respectfully disagree. But by being that transparent with each other, you've really come to a closeness in that sense.
Yeah, and that's because when you get to a point where you can be transparent and that person stays, that's when you know that you're truly loved. It is so many people that they don't, even in their relationships, they're not really sure if they're loved because they have yet to become transparent with that person. So in actuality, that person is in love with a fictitious person or a representative, so to speak, and they still, even in their quote unquote loving relationships, they still have yet to find love.
Right. So that's the foundation of what I wanted to talk about is when I say resetting relationship, I don't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't necessarily mean purging. And as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about how, at the end of the year, I've heard several times, go through your phone and, all those people who you haven't talked to or haven't poured, positivity into your life, just purge them, or go through to your friend group and just, reset. And I'm like, what? Wow. Like I've even been in a service or two where the pastor said, no, pull your phone out right now. And you tell them that you are not going into this year, with no more negativity. If they got nothing, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because that says a lot about the relationship. If I can text you, bye. Like, I don't need to talk to you no more. What kind of relationship you have? But for where we want to go tonight, I wanted to talk about resetting from starting with ourselves.
No, certainly.
So I'm not going to judge anybody else or blame anybody else for any of the situations or issues I'm having in any relationships. Let's just do our own reset.
That's great.
Like you're saying, from even being able to get a little bit more comfortable enough with ourselves so that we can be transparent and maybe even enhance those relationships around us rather than lose them, but bring a better self to those relationships for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to start with, in resetting, the first thing you might have to do is evaluate or reflect. So from someone who deals with relationships and people in relationship, if I were trying to walk through preparing for the next year and reflecting, what kinds of things should I consider about the way I communicate or the way people communicate with me or around me?
First of all, yeah, my decision making is probably twofold. It is always peace.
And prosperity. Okay.
So peace is definitely like, when I make this decision, will there be peace in the end? And then it's always a futuristic decision. So I never make my decisions based off of that day or even that month. It's always, after I make this decision, how is this going to impact a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So in order for me to do that, I have to have a vision of what that many years is going to look like for me. Mm-hmm. So you have to first have a vision, or at least know what your happiness or your goal is going to be, in order for you to even have the appropriate relationships that you're creating to get to that point. And the problem is, many people don't even have that to start with. So if I'm seeking,
going back to the root is vision.
Yeah. So if you don't even know where you're going, and you're going to people for direction, no matter what direction they give you, it sounds good. And the irony in all of that is, to know where you're going, that already eliminates the people that are pointless in your life just by knowing, because you won't have time to deal with that or them. Now, it doesn't mean you have to cut them off. Now, that's the funny thing about the whole example you gave about the pastor saying, go to your phone, find the people you haven't talked to, text them. Like, why? You already weren't talking to them.
But I think the idea was purge, evaluate. But
at the same time, to purge is only for fruit to grow. So the concept of purging is so that it will allow for fruit to grow. So you're removing things that were preventing you from growing. But if you haven't been talking to them, they weren't necessarily preventing or contributing. They weren't bad. Now, if you have intentional environmental issues with people that are in your environment that are preventing you from having a positive outlook on life, or there's no contribution, they're just pulling all of your positive energy from you, then you need to purge those type of relationships. But to have people around that you don't know that you might need them later and just disregard them because that wasn't they weren't talking to you in that season, that is just I don't even know what to call it. But I think it's
extreme.
Yeah, it's definitely extreme. But at the same time, you could really be ruining a future opportunity because you decided that in that particular season, because they weren't around, you would never need them again.
So let me dig into a little bit more about when you were saying if they're not bringing positive energy or no in alignment with your vision, right? So typically your friend group, I'm going to one step back, because another conversation that we had early in our relationship, that you know where I'm going with this. We were at lunch and I said, my friend Eddie said, I'm not your friend. And I went, I don't think I like that answer. And we need to review this, but not in front of company, Eddie. And so that goes to a point, like, what's the difference between, for you, what's the threshold for friendship? Because honestly, if we're going back to our vision, we're trying to figure out how people fit or don't fit, or even evaluate how they are contributing to our vision. Some people are going to sit in friend and some are an associate, or there's categories, but I know that that's an important word for you, friend. So can you give me a little insight why I wasn't your friend in the first 5 minutes?
Well, all right. The best way I can really answer this is, if I call everyone my friend, and then I call you my friend, do you feel special?
No, it means you're popular.
If I call everyone my wife, and then I just happen to call my wife, would she feel special? And the answer to those questions are no. So if you're not selective in giving someone that type of a title, then you really don't have a definition for that title. I don't want to share my definition of that title because I don't want to cause people to create that as their definition.
But the notion of exclusivity and value.
Most certainly. So, and you actually never made it to the friend zone. You jumped
Thanks so much.
You jumped straight into family, like as you introduced me, best brother or whatever. Like,
you're my brother. Yes.
Yeah. I never put you into that category. Now I definitely have friends, and what I can say is there is in that relationship, I benefit as well as they do.
Mm-hmm. It's an exchange.
Exactly. So that is where most of the value is. So we hadn't had time for me to even know if you added value to my life.
That's true. It was early, so I was early. I was just so enamored because I had read the book and I was a fan and we were hanging out and I was trying to make connections and I was like, my friend, and he abruptly said, and no. And move on. And I went, however, to be honest, it goes to the point of value. The conversation that we had after that led to a great deal of respect for your effort that you had put into defining what that was, but also made me respect the opportunity to even get in that space, right? So probably why this accelerated was because I think I just came to the game a little differently. Like I respect this person, so I'm gonna bring my A game. Not that I'm not myself, but I'm going to intentionally pursue a healthy relationship because there's value to be exchanged here. So I go back to when you're resetting and you're doing your own personal reflection on who you have in your life. Some of this is about determining value and really starting to give honor to those who really have invested in you and you've invested in them, and to start to really appreciate those relationships. I think that's another thing that we have is a real honest appreciation for the gift of relationship.
Yeah.
Because connections don't happen happenstance. You can't force a connection. When you do find connection, it's something you should nurture. That's definitely something that's special. So to that end, there are people who don't necessarily have that level of connection. Should they still be in your circle? And is it okay to classify people as associate? Or do you see what I'm saying? Do you feel like that makes the other person less than? How does that work in relationship? And can people move from one to the other?
No, I don't think it makes that person less than. It just puts them at a certain place in your priorities. Every decision that I make, and I'm not going to apologize for my religious beliefs, but my values are God, family, business, miscellaneous pretty much after that. Like
Okay.
I can kind of judge. I can kind of juggle everything else. So when God speaks to me, my wife knows it. I might share what he said and even share what I'm going to do based off what he said. But that's not necessarily a conversation. She doesn't really have input on whether I'm going to do it or not. It's me sharing. If you want to come along, you can come along. If you don't, I'm sorry. But in the realm of my priorities, you come after God. And when I go to work, if my boss said I need you here and my wife said she needs me there and the date is the same, I'm going to advise my boss that I'm not going to make it. They can tell me that I could lose my job, but I'm not really telling you all that my wife needs me to be there for you to think that you could even influence me into coming to work. I'm letting you know that you're not going to have me there, and I'm okay with the consequences because my wife, she takes precedence over you. And then my job, if I'm doing ministry work and my job needs me, I'm letting my ministry know, hey, I'm sorry, I have to work because they are under that. And that's how my decisions are being made. So when you categorize persons from a relational standpoint, and that's what I was thinking when you were talking, you became a priority over certain things. So my decision making, if Michelle called me, that superseded the need that person needed because of where you were placed from the relationship that grew. So it allows me to make better decisions based off of me prioritizing my relationship.
Right. And so as we go into 2018, it's about being sensitive to the place that people hold in your life and making some other decisions depending on that, or understanding how to work that in. Especially if it goes back to your vision. At some points in your life, friendships are so important that vision almost becomes secondary. And then there are other parts of your life where vision is really important and friends are complementary to that. Depending on where you are in your life, it still does affect your decision making as to what kinds of friends and how and where you spend time with those friends. So we're not making any judgments on right, wrong, or the other. We're just saying it's the time of the year where it's perfectly reasonable to kind of just go through and assess what you're trying to achieve, how your friends play into that process, and what decisions you're going to make based on that information.
Yeah, and it actually, I mean, having those values or things that you make your decisions by, it makes the decision making easier because it's not an emotional thing. This is how I make my decisions. So based off of this, okay, it's easier to make that decision because this is the actual, what's the word I'm looking for? The formula to my decision making. So if I do this, everything's going to be okay. And they're just gonna have to deal with it. And you know, that is how I operate. Like now, for example, now I'm glad that I even made that statement. They have to deal with that. You, because of where you lie in my sphere of people, you don't just have to deal with it. You get the opportunity to understand why I made that decision. Not everybody gets that. It's like, you can however you want to take that is on you. And actually that's where you were when you said friend. I'm like, no,
because you have no apology whatsoever. You were
like,
however, if you say that today, we're having a follow-up conversation, and we're gonna get some feedback. Because I need to understand. But again, that's the coolness of the evolution of a relationship. And so I'm going to move to expectation. So regardless of what you've decided as the hierarchy of your friend group and how you've decided to allocate time and energy and effort to them, for 2019, how can we show up better in relationships by managing our expectations about people?
I only have expectations of two people. That's me and God.
This is interesting because it's going to be about what is expectations, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, because, you should have standards for other people
That's
to
fair.
become a part of your life, but you should not have expectations of other people in their response to you in your life. Because when we get disappointed based off of our expectations, it has absolutely nothing to do with the other person. Matter of fact, everything that we conclude to make us happy, sad, in love, or whatever is based off of expectations being met or not being met.
That is very true.
So if you have the mindset of someone has to do this in order for me to be, for one, you've already set yourself up for failure. But if you look at every opportunity as a learning experience, you put on your learning hat and that relationship will grow, because instead of you getting upset, you ask the necessary questions to understand their response. And from that, you'll learn them better, they'll learn you better, and you can grow. For example, typically, if something doesn't go as planned or something happens to me that I feel is offensive, I go to that person, I share how I took what they did, and I ask them, did they mean for me to take it the way that I took it?
Yep. The way you said it, the way I heard it may not be.
Exactly. So now one of two things can happen. You can find out that you have a right to cut them off and disregard them as a person that is definitely not your friend, or you can learn a different perspective and how they think, and even possibly adopt their thought process.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of breakdowns in relationships and arguments come from, because the things that we think we know, we do not discuss. And when they do not align with what we think we know to be correct, we decide without even explaining how we came to our conclusion that that person is wrong, rude, evil, or what have you. And we miss out on many opportunities to grow in a relationship, as well as people, period, with a broader perspective.
Assumptions and expectations. Like you said, we make assumptions based on what we think we heard, and we fill in the blanks, because it's very natural to fill in the gaps with pre-existing information, right?
Yeah.
So we fill in those blanks and then make assumptions based on what we believe.
That's right.
And sometimes don't even give the other person a chance to defend, to justify, to qualify, to clarify what they were saying, because we've already made a determination. And it's kind of goes back to active listening. Like it's difficult to cultivate a good relationship without truly listening.
Yeah, well, I have this exercise that I do. I mentor young men 11 through 18 years of age, and I want them to be effective communicators. So every once in a while, I'll make them all line up, close their eyes, and I will give a scenario. With that scenario, while they maintain their eyes being closed, they have to make a decision by stepping forward or stepping backward. After they do that, they open their eyes to see what decisions were made. And oftentimes they judge each other based on the decision, but then I make them explain the reason for their answers. One time there was one of the examples was, and I go deep because I just try to get to the root of how they're thinking, why they think the way they think. So their eyes were all closed. The actual question was, if they were out on a camping trip with their mother and best friend, and they were the only ones that can swim, and somehow the mom and the friend were drowning, and they could only have enough energy to save one of them, who would they save? So, of course, most of them chose mom, but one boy chose the friend. So they're looking like, that's your mother. What in the world is wrong? I mean, they're going at him. And I asked him, well, why would you choose your friend over your mom? And he said, because my mom has lived her life, and she would want me to save my friend because he has yet to live his. And it was a serious pause.
Paradigm shift.
a quietness in the room, but it let me know that they now started to think. And then all the questions after that, there was no judgment. It was, I want to know the why now. I want to understand why. It wasn't like, what is wrong with you? It was, I want to know the why. And what's even more interesting, when I did that with the dads, the room is like half split because dad wasn't there. So they can understand that. It's so crazy how we go from, and that's what I mean by understanding your values. We can go from, oh, I'm about family, to, well, depending on this, like your values really aren't family. It is depending on the circumstance. So like, I really want people to get to the root of what they really believe. Because if you can throw something in there that shifts that, then that's not necessarily what you believe. And it's
Yeah, that's what why I find it so engaging to listen, because part of this is as a result of our many heated exchanges.
Yeah.
Challenge each other's paradigms.
Uh-huh.
But it's the idea that allowing you to just be, and I say this probably because we've challenged each other's paradigms and learned from each other, that when you can accept the other person as a person that has a opinion of their own, that that came from their life experience, that they are truly justified in believing what they believe based on their circumstances.
That's exactly right.
Then you can listen with, I don't know the whole story, I only know what you're saying, so let me ask more questions.
Yep.
And it just changes the energy of exchanges.
This is where relationships grow to me, and this is what I try to teach. If we can just get to the point where I don't agree with you, but I understand where you're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
so many things will change. I remember when I was a kid, I was actually raised Muslim, and just hearing a lot of what Malcolm X had to say about Caucasians and stuff. And I'm like, how in the world can a person just hate an entire race? And I'm like, what in the world? But then I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I read how, his father had life insurance and he was tied to a railroad track. And they said that he committed suicide after the train ran over. When he was in school, he said he wanted to be a lawyer, and they said N-words are not lawyers. They're good with their hands. And then with the death of his father, all of the racism that caused his mom to go insane and things of that nature. So I read that book saying I don't agree with him, but I can understand, with that being his life journey, how he can come to that conclusion. So from that, I always wanted to understand the story. So not so that I can, to prevent myself from judging people, and yet understanding them and meeting them at that at least understanding and compassionate place. And from there, people can grow. I don't have to agree with you to understand you and empathize with your situation. And people don't take the time to even want to do that.
True, but if we go back to where we started, where we have understood that there are categories of friendships and relationships, and whilst the ones that get the most time ought to get the most effort for listening. Hopefully what we learn in giving those people time will kind of bleed over into the other relationships, and we'll start to learn how to relate to other people as well. But for those who are closest to us, I think that it would be an honorable opportunity this 2019 to spend more time being active listeners, accepting their perspective as the sum total of their experience, not your own, and kind of bringing down some of that expectation into just acceptance.
And also the fixing what we are doing wrong would eliminate a whole bunch of relational issues.
So hold that thought, because we're gonna come back for part 2 of thinking about what we do wrong.
Okay.
So thank you for the first part of this session. I'm gonna take a little break and allow people to regroup and come back. But this has been awesome.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. So welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Edward L. Fairley, an amazing relationship expert, author, a speaker, a mentor, and we're talking about relationships today and resetting relationships in preparation for 2019, just bringing a new self to the table. So we had a really lively conversation in part 1. So for those people who didn't listen, it was about reflection and evaluation of your circle, and then kind of managing expectations through really bringing it back to acceptance and getting to the root of your vision, how people align with your vision, and how to actively listen to people to just allow them to be and be a part of your life. But then we finished off with that. So thanks, Eddie, again for coming back. This is my brother. So we had finished up with what can we? Sometimes we do the wrong thing in relationships that either set the tone for those relationships that for a long time. So if we're going through this reevaluation and resetting, what kinds of things should we be thinking? What were you thinking when that thought came up?
How I really think probably 80% of failed relationships are from what we don't take care of ourselves, because everyone's waiting for the other person to do the right thing. And if we just take care of what we do wrong or our contributions, because typically we say, okay, well, if he or she does this, I wouldn't mind doing that. Or if he or she does this, exactly. So that's typically how we do things. And if we just did all of the things or worked on the things that we could do right, it automatically starts a snowball effect of the other person just starting to change. And they don't even realize it.
You go a little further. If we took care of bringing our best self to the table, you're saying that the relationships would be better? What do you say?
Most certainly. I'll put it out. This is how I break it down when I do training or coaching. It's be, do, have.
Okay.
It's that simple. Be, do, have. Be who you want to have in your life, in your core, which in turn will cause you to do things according to that being or becoming. And then you'll have all the things that you push out. Oftentimes we can't receive things even when we get them because we don't believe that it can be done. And it's because of our belief that it can't happen that we can't even receive it when we get it. That's from love, that's forgiveness, that is all those things. So if we become the forgiveness, if we become the unconditional love, we have given us evidence that it can happen, which in turn allows us to be receptive to it happening, as well as opens an opportunity for it to happen to us.
That's true. I'm about to do a presentation on being single, right? And I was going through all of these assessments of the ways people perceive singleness and all this. But to be honest, at the root of it, it became, I am enough. Because if I can come to the table as I'm enough, then singleness is really not the issue.
Yeah.
Right? It then becomes about how I relate to other people from being enough so that I create the space for positive relationships. I'm not running around thirsty. I'm not running around jealous.
Right.
Not running around expecting somebody to fix me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm enough. Like you said, if I can love myself, if I can forgive myself, if I can accept myself, I'm also most likely a better mate.
That's right.
Because I'm not expecting that person to be all of this. I'm bringing a whole person to the table.
That's right. And when you're not enough, or you don't feel that you're enough, which to me means you don't love yourself, you become desperate. One of the most offensive things that people ask me, and I correct them, I will, is, where's your other half?
Mm-hmm. I heard you. That's true. I've heard
And
this
I'm
one.
like, and I'm like, my wife is at home, but she's not my other half. That would imply that without her, I'm not whole. And for you to put yourself in a predicament that someone, that them being a part, whether they leave you through death or divorce, that means you are no longer a whole human being. That is a very dangerous place to put yourself. People think that's an extreme statement, but people don't realize how subtle thoughts can really create a thought process and a belief in a truth. To where now, if she did leave for whatever reason, now I can't move on. I cannot be, because a part of me is gone. That's craziness to me. And that comes with a lot of relationships. They're looking for someone to fill a void, which in turn makes them a slave to whatever it is that they do when they fill that void, because they don't want to lose that. So they are doing everything that they can to maintain that out of fear of loss. But if you come as enough,
I agree.
you don't
It's
deal
enough.
with
You know, not not that I don't need you. It's not
That's
that
right.
I'm not saying I'm everything.
That's right.
I'm everything, and I'm enough. Is not the same thing.
That's right. That's right.
I'm
That's right.
inclusive, and I can attest to what you're saying, and this has been an evolution. So I'm not gonna say I always agreed with you with
Yeah.
this whole thing because of the way I was raised.
Yeah. Yeah.
To have,
That's
but
right.
as a more mature person, as somebody who has collaborated with you and has had their mind opened on something, I can tell you that the relationships that I have now, I'm thinking of one in particular, accepting the person for who they are, very different from me, had a different background,
Yeah.
yet still has value. They have value. It's just not in the way that I would present it.
That's right.
And being less judgy, so not trying to evaluate whether what they do is right or wrong,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
trying to evaluate add value or not, which is a little different,
That's
has
right.
made that the most positive, one of the most positive relationships, because I don't expect them to be right or wrong. It's not a judgy thing. Like
Yeah.
I'm accepting of what you're bringing
That's right.
and celebrating who you are, but I don't need you to change.
That's right. Most certainly. Most certainly.
And I think
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was saying that I think that as we are preparing for the new year, I don't know if it's tolerance or acceptance is the right word, but I think there's something very liberating about being real intentional about opening the door to the possibilities of better, more open, more transparent relationships. And I think it takes a level of trust, to be honest, whether you're trusting yourself or you're trusting the other person not to hurt you. I'm not sure, but I think that trust is a factor.
But see, that's the thing about that's the thing about true love and being enough. I don't have to really worry about lack of trust, because it's nothing that you do that's going to add or take from me. And that's what's liberating, to know that what I share, it's just transparency.
Because I want to.
Yeah, yeah. And what you do with that is totally up to you. I share. What you do with what I share, that is up to you, and that is going to reflect in how your life turns out. But it does not determine how mine does. So that is the true liberty of being transparent and not having expectations, because how they respond, and that's why I'm so passionate about love, because love is an expression of what love is. It's just love. It's not give and take, and that's where people fail at love, because they think it's give and take. They think it's a two-way street. Love, actual love, is a one-way street. It is an expression of that to the person in which you love, in hopes that they realize that you love them. But manipulation, on the other hand, is is I'm doing this, and I expect, like a boomerang, for you to do something back for me. And because you don't, now I'm upset, or you quote unquote don't love me. But if you expressed it out of love, there's no expectation outside of hoping that they know that you love them. But
I think that I've expressed, I think I said that as acceptance, but I think that's what I meant. Because when you accept someone for who they are,
yeah,
you're not asking them to earn your attention.
yeah, most certainly, most certainly. No, not at
You know
all.
what I mean? Like, so that's what you're not asking people to earn love from you.
Hmm.
But I think that we do. I think that we really want people to earn our friendship and earn our love, and they have to keep points. We got a scorecard. You're like, you're doing well, you're not doing well.
Oh my goodness. And that's why people come to me.
If I was looking at behavior,
They come to me,
right?
and this is a very common response, and I get it quite often. Man, do you know all the stuff I did for her birthday, and all she got me was, or all he did for me was? They have a whole list of things that they do for that person, which again is not out of love, it's out of manipulation, because you wanted this extravagant thing because of what you've done. I can't even think, like, I just do for my wife. I don't know what I do for my wife. I just do it because I feel the need to do it, and I love my wife and my family. So I just do stuff for them. I don't have a list. That's too much mental space for me to carry around what it is that I do for my wife and children as a comparison to what it is that she or they do back to me. That I just
People want to feel appreciated. You want to feel appreciated. They want to feel like they're not just out here on their own, just loving on somebody and they're getting nothing in return. However, that does beg the question of why are you loving on somebody when there is no, like, when there was no. I guess that's what. Let me ask you, the expert. There's a problem there. Like, you just loving on somebody or crushing on somebody, and they don't reciprocate is an issue. But at the same time, being in a relationship with the expectation of tit for tat is also an issue.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. People deeply, in the core of them, can tell when stuff is just genuinely done out of love. And if people were to sit on the outside of my marriage and look at us and how me and my wife interact, it would look like love is a two-way street. Because the way she loves me and the way I love back, it looks like we're doing this back and forth dance. When in actuality, at best, we're competing. Because nothing that she's doing is in response to her wanting something from me. Everything that I've done up until this point, though, makes her want to do the things that she's doing for me. So it's not because she wants something back, it's because she's already received. Does that make sense? She's already experienced
inspiration.
love.
I always say that proper inspiration is a response. And it's not necessarily because you have to direct it.
Yeah.
Inspired to give because you've given unconditionally. And I think, but that's the love everybody's looking for. And you know that you're not typical. Although I will say, as I'm gonna be honest, being exposed to your philosophy and seeing how you walk it out has changed my standard, right? By virtue of changing the standard and behaving differently, I have actually brought that type of energy into my life. It's not because I'm doing anything. It's just because. So it took a little time, but I can say that the adjustment does make a difference in what comes into your life.
Mm-hmm. Most certainly.
And maybe what I'm proposing is that we take the time to consider resetting. Do you think you can reset a relationship? So you went through your book.
I did.
You've had an issue.
I did reset it. Remember?
So relationship can be reset.
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. And I actually, to give people even more hope, my wife cannot articulate my philosophies and my thought processes in reference to my relationship theories and things of that nature. By happenstance or her being around it, she does it without thinking. But I say all that to say this was a one-sided shift in our relationship. This wasn't a mutual approach to this. So I say that to give people hope that if you, like I said, if you work on what you can do, that in itself can just shift the entire dynamic of the collective relationship. Because my wife, I promise you, she cannot break down my thought processes and how it works and why it works. She doesn't know that, but she is a recipient of it and a product of it. So it just happens. So she would do it without thinking about it. I'm intentional.
Well, I'm inquisitive. The reason I even can have this conversation is because I ask a million questions. And I can't probably articulate 75% of your philosophies. And I'm saying that the paradigm shift of expecting better from as a setting a standard because I'm enough, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm treating myself well, mm-hmm. and I expect to be treated well because I'm not going to let you treat me worse than I treat me.
That's right. That's right.
And that's not talking about getting your nails done or your hair done. That's more like I appreciate myself. I appreciate the gifts I bring to the table. I try to be an honest and upstanding in person. So I want somebody to be like that to me. You're saying that behavior reset your relationship, and I'm saying I'm from the other side of not being married. Setting new standards caused me to shift some relationships, right? Mm-hmm. So I had to bring close to some relationships mm-hmm. that weren't treating me the way I needed to be.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Which not because they're bad people.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying they're bad people.
Your standards for yourself.
For myself, that
that's
they
right.
And it was making me
that's
feel
right.
bad.
That's right. That's right.
To say, how about let's make a shift? But that created space.
Exactly. That's right.
And I couldn't force the other.
For the people that you actually need, most certainly. So now you're just unpacking what I said earlier. Select the people with standards, but don't have expectations. If you select the people with the certain standards, you know that the core of them is a good place. You understand what I'm saying? Because hopefully your standards are based off of values and morals and things of that nature. So when you choose that person, what they do, you can go back to the standards that you've chosen and know that it's not coming from a bad place. And that will allow you to be receptive to understanding their thought processes in order for you to be okay with or agreeing to disagree and things of that nature. So you select the persons in your circle based off of your standards, but you don't have expectations of their actions because they're just human and they're not a person that has walked through your life in your shoes, so they don't necessarily see things the way that you see them. So now it's your opportunity to see things from their viewpoint and then grow from there.
I agree. I think it was, and this is my next point, was taking inventory of my own baggage.
Yeah.
Right. So we come into relationships with baggage, and we always talk about don't do that. But the fact is that we have it.
Yeah.
It's not that you have to keep it. Nobody said you had to keep it.
No,
but you do have. And being able to really do that has made me a better friend because I'm showing up more honest. I'm showing up more honest because I don't have to hide. I don't have to keep moving the bags around so you don't step on them. I don't have to keep being weighted down by the perceptions and the frustrations that come with carrying them. I do, if we're talking, that bag over there is not unpacked. We don't want to go over there. So let's not have this conversation. But that's not because of you. It's just because I haven't unpacked that bag and I don't want to talk about it. So being able to show up more honestly does create an opportunity for reset as well.
But even with that, it gives them permission to do the same. So many people are waiting.
I agree, yes.
Like they're holding their baggage because they don't know if it's okay. But when you give them yours, they know it's okay to share now. So I think that has a lot to do with my transparency, because I know it liberates other people from the stuff that they're hiding or they're allowing to keep them in bondage.
Yeah, I think I have another friend who's a life coach, and he did one time we were having a conversation, and I was hitting up against one of my own barriers in my own mind. So it was whether I believed I could or couldn't. I believed it was true, right? I believed I couldn't. He believed I could, and we were arguing. And he was like, "Hold on a second. Let me just tell you that here's the value that you have, and here's why I believe it. And I'm gonna just sit here for a second while you just think about that." And I went, which was a challenge to, first of all, accepting that somebody, I have to accept that it's truth for him. Like, I can't tell you don't believe that. You just told me this is what I see, and this is what I believe. And I want you to just sit with it. Then I have a choice. I can evaluate it from an objective standpoint, or I could just get all emotional and reject it. Like, I don't want to talk, I can't believe. There's like, at some point you surrender to, let me listen to my own voice and put it in check. One of the things I was listening today, I was in a course on coaching, and they were talking about the voices in your head are such a part of how you behave and what you believe, that if you don't take the time to listen and sort, you think all of those voices are true.
True, that's exactly right.
It's noise. It's not real. It's just a perception. So what we say about getting your self-talk right in order to kind of be able to bring your best self to a relationship?
My philosophy is a really simple philosophy, and this is what I live by. I either gain or break even. I never lose. Gain or break even. I never lose. So I have people, so I have people that are trying to date. Well, I like him, and I want to say something to him, but I'm scared he's going to reject you. I said, okay. All right. I said, okay, that's a very honest place to be and way to think. I said, so if you don't ask him out, will you ever get with him? They're like, no. If he says no, are you with him? No. So you didn't lose anything. At worst, you break even. You stay where you are. But at best, you gain. There is absolutely no loss in not already having something. You can't not have him any more than you don't have him. You can't not have her any more than you don't have her. So you're either going to gain or you're going to break even. That the problem with our logic is we think we're losing something. When we get to the point where we realize that nothing has been lost, and if anything is lost, it's in you not doing anything, how your mind and your imagination really just takes that and goes crazy.
Remember when I was dating and I was like, I'm so afraid I'm going to be alone. I'm never going to marry, I'm going to be the cat lady. I was dating somebody. And I was like, you ever going to marry me? And you were like, are you fine now? And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to be alone. I was like, but you're alone now.
Exactly.
How much better?
Like, you have all of the evidence right now. People are like, well, what am I going to do if I never get married? What you're doing right now. Like, it's like that is the stuff that you do know. What you don't know is what's going to happen if you get married. So that is honestly my philosophy. I either gain or break even. I absolutely never lose. Never lose.
Never lose. Never lose. I don't know, man. I'm thinking like, there's relationships that didn't go well, or getting fired. I mean, I'm just thinking that people who leave you or disappoint you. What are you saying? You don't get disappointed?
No, I'm saying I learn from No, I'm saying I learn from disappointment and I grow from disappointment. So that's still a gain. I've gained wisdom through that relationship. So I always gain. I never lose.
You can lose. You can physically or emotionally lose something, but the resulting gain in information is the ultimate win. Like you
All
have
right,
learned it.
so watch how this house is built, and you can't forget what you built with this house. So you can't go from enough to I've lost something because someone left. It's not possible. So you either were enough or you weren't when you started building that house.
I think that's what I haven't experienced the shift from after acknowledging enough. So I can't articulate this from experience, but I do understand that for some of the relationships that I have right now, because I'm so accepting and celebratory of where I am, if they left, it would be, but I'm still grateful for the time I had.
Yeah, most certainly.
And if the relationship changed, it would still be, but dang, that was a really cool experience. It was a good time. That I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I had a lot of interesting new experiences in that. And you're right. But that is maturity, would you say?
Yeah, most certainly. Of course.
So when you're talking to your team, do you feel like you're talking to 18, 17, 19-year-olds?
You're breaking
I
up.
feel like they grasp this the same way, or do younger people grasp this information the same way?
They're more receptive to it because you have people that have been in the game for a longer period of time. So it's a lot of unlearning that they have to do. Whereas the person that had not been in the game that long, it's not that much that I have to, they're literally learning new stuff. So this is just a new thing to add to what they're learning. Whereas other people have concluded, even in their wrong thinking, that their way is right, even though it has not produced them anything that's worth having. Which is how they got to me in the first place. That's the people that I have to really get to. I have a lot of different scenarios and things that I have to just bring. I have to find out where their truth lies and bring stuff from their truth to the reality of what I'm teaching. So the way that people learn is, and how they really learn is to be able to correlate it to something that they know for sure. So I always find out where they are or what they are good at, and I help them correlate it with what they do know. So now you really know that you understand this because you've correlated with it with that.
So I'm gonna let you kind of tie this up in a bow with opportunity. And I say that because we had this really cool long conversation one time about why no love, right? Why is that whole idea of saving families, like one relationship at a time, important? And so as we move into 2019 and realize that relationship is the root of life, I mean, we connect, we relate, and it's life to us. But even in that, there is a root, and it is connections kind of based on love in varying degrees. So what is no love, and why is it important to you, and what is its mission as it relates to relationship?
All right, so if you just pay attention to everything that's going on in the world, a lot of hatred, or even the centers that are being built to address certain needs in communities and things of that nature, if you really got to the root of every issue that there is, it's going to always be love. And what happens is we put a lot of band-aids, or we address symptoms, but it's still growing because we have not addressed the actual rooted problem. So I remember, I think I told you this story. One day I was at a networking event and we exchanged a whole bunch of cards. And through the cards exchange, I had in my pocket a whole bunch of cards on my shirt. And when I came home, my kitchen floor was dirty, so I decided to sweep the floor up. Got a nice little pile, and I started sweeping the dirt into the dustpan. And when I leaned over, the cards that were in my shirt pocket began to fall out. And just as a reflex, I began to reach for the cards that fell out of the pocket, which caused more cards to fall out. So I reached to get those cards, and more cards were falling out of my pocket. Then I finally stood up, pressed my chest, where the cards were, and then I took the cards out and put them on the table, and then I was able to pick up the cards and pick up the dirt with the dustpan. And I say all that to say this: most people are creating centers and all these laws and things of that nature to reach for the ground for the cards that are spilling out, as opposed to getting to the actual deck that's in the pocket square of the world, which is love. If we took care of issues with lack of self-love, we eliminate hate, we eliminate the killing, we eliminate the need to compare ourselves because we love ourselves. And all those things stem from lack of love for ourselves. So if I fix self-love, I fix relationships. And if I fix relationships, I fix households. If I fix households, I fix communities. If I fix communities, I fix cities. If I fix cities, I fix states, nations, and ultimately the world. So that is why No Love is so important. And my approach with No Love, which the book has evolved thanks to you believing in me and pushing me, push, pushing me to believe in myself and who I was called to be. No Love has now, or the book has evolved into a simulation that allows people to.
No Love is spelled K-N-O-W.
Exactly.
So no love, not
no, and understanding, which actually is the reason for the process. So once we get to understand how it works and how we can approach it, we can have love intentionally as opposed to haphazardly. And a lot of people, they can't have love, or they're going in and out of love because they don't understand how they got it. So they're getting it by accident. But if you understand what's going on, you can be intentional and strategic, especially as entrepreneurs out there. We like to be strategic and have game plans and things of that nature. So this will allow you to pass and fail at relationships on the game so that you can learn, because nothing is a better teacher than experience. So you can take that experience from the game simulation and fail at relationships to prevent yourself from doing it in real life. So that is what No Love, which is KNOWLOVE, is. And the slogan of my company is from No Love, which is NOLOVE, to No Love, KNOWLOVE, meaning at a place of not having and not understanding to a place of experiencing and understanding. And that is why relationships to me are what keep me up at night, and actually what I will be fighting for until I take my last breath.
Well, that is the core of resetting relationships, is moving from no love, N-O love, to no love, K-N-O-W, love. And it starts with self-love, because once you, and self-love is an evolutionary process. It's definitely not something you just wake up one morning and you get it. But as you make progress with yourself, you make progress with others.
That's exactly right.
It's a self-fulfilling and self-feeding kind of process. So No Love to me has been part of holding myself accountable. I have honestly, I can say I have shifted from no love and being the complainer about what I don't have, which impacted all of the relationships I had, because I was coming from a place of lack and either judging those who did have, quote, love, and love meaning romantic love, but also loving friends from childhood and these close-knit families, or whatever this closeness is. It not having it makes you recoil and you have some negativity with it. So that's the no love side, and O love.
Yeah.
But working with you and talking to you, and you, iron sharpens iron. So there's things I brought to you, but there's things you brought to me. Being able to shift to knowing love, and knowing it both intellectually, being able to understand what that means, emotionally, being able to feel it, for getting more and more comfortable with it, put it that way. I'm not going to say I'm completely finished with this process, but not running from the uncomfortableness, that vulnerability that comes with love. Love comes with vulnerability.
Yeah,
because giving giving love without expecting anything in return is pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, most certainly.
Because the world expects that to be just smashed. But giving love without any expectation and then getting it is what you were talking about with your wife, where she's inspired to do, not because she has to, but because it just feels good. So giving love unconditionally inspires people to respond unconditionally, and then it becomes no longer in competitive exchange. And that relationship is what we have, because I can't give you anything you don't have already. But I appreciate the time that we spend together. But I don't need, like, you don't need anything, I don't need anything, but we just really appreciate
That's right. Most
what we do bring to the table. And so resetting for me is important every so often. So I appreciate you taking the time to share with us your insight on relationships. I do encourage anybody to reach out to you. And how would they do that? Don't you post? You post like thought starters or thoughts of the day and stuff.
I used to. I'm so busy working on I actually found 3 actual manufacturers for my board game. So I've been really heavily working on that.
No Love's gonna be an awesome game. It's when it comes out and being able to play these scenarios out.
Yeah. So they can find me and even look and get a glimpse of those scenarios and even the game and the concept at either No Love Inc., which is a Facebook page, No Love Incorporated. You can find me on Instagram at No Love Inc. You can find me at Twitter, No Love Inc.
Great post on Instagram.
Thanks. Yep.
And also, where would I find the book?
The book is anywhere. If you online, Amazon, honestly, anywhere. If you just type in the handbook for increasing your relationship IQ. Matter of fact, if you're listening, just because you're listening, if you email me or inbox me in any of the platforms that I gave you, I'll just inbox you a PDF of the book.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, I read the book in one night and started this journey, which several years later has been pretty awesome. So I'm just saying, if I had the opportunity to reset, I think we all should take the opportunity to reset. And you've been a huge part of that, and I appreciate you for it. And I thank you for the time. It's been awesome.
Love you much. Love you much. Any time. I mean, it was a no-brainer. You said, hey, can you do it? I'm like, just tell me what that it is, and I'll be there.
Yes, and I was delaying, but I know that this is going to be a great Christmas gift, because it's going to come out around Christmas as a Christmas gift and get people ready for that whole New Year's process, and knowing that loving yourself, they are enough. They can know love is an amazing gift, and we expect great things in 2019. So umi-connections is going to do some great things in 2019, and you're going to be back.
Oh, please. And one thing especially, because we as human beings, me and my wife were just having this conversation. She said that, she said it's hard at times to realize that she's wrong. And it's like, it was a pause, like, here's the opportunity for you to jump on me and say, yeah, you're right, babe. And I'm like, actually, I can understand how that is, or how that could be. Because maybe 3 times out of the day, depending on your house setup, that you see yourself. We always look outside of ourselves. We see everyone else. We can see them all the time, much more than we see ourselves. So we can see when they have issues or troubles or things of that nature. We only see ourselves when we go to the bathroom, or if we have a mirror in our room, or if we do selfies. And when we do selfies, we don't even post the first one. It's like the 7th or 8th one after we find the one that we're okay with. So even when we look at that, that's not really looking at ourselves. So we are the only creatures that don't look within for our purpose and things of that nature. Everything in this world already has its purpose in it, whether you're spiritual or not. If you look at an apple, the seed will create an apple tree. A fish does not have to go to swim school. A bird does not have to go to flight school. Everything that was created already has its purpose within. and we pursue our happiness, and we get caught up in the word pursuit. So we seek outwardly for happiness when we're looking in the wrong place, which is why we miss it. Everything that we have and need is already inside of us. We were born with it. And if we stop looking so much outwardly and we begin to intentionally look within ourselves, we will find, appreciate, and build off of our own happiness in love.
All right, world. Do you see why I love me some? It's really took a lot to take. Got to take him in doses, but definitely a comeback. You definitely got to come back.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you, Umi family. We will check us out on the next episode.
It's been a pleasure. Lovely. Bye.